Hi everyone and welcome back to the George Collection. I'm Rachel Rightside Blonde. Tucker Carlson interviewed Putin. And finally, after billions of dollars being sent to Ukraine, we have some kind of inkling as to what the Russians are feeling and what Putin is feeling. This is a big reason why John Kennedy created George. I think he knew the consolidation of media was coming. He knew that this pushing of narratives was coming. And what better way to share this message than by a magazine that can't be tampered with? This is original. You cannot change the words inside of this magazine like you can change the definition of words on the internet. Each issue is its own little time capsule. And that's one of the reasons why I love going back into these issues to see what were we talking about in the 90s and how is it playing out today and what other little clues did John Kennedy leave in his magazine for us to find in 2024. Today I wanted to go back into the inaugural issue and talk about the dodging bullets with the FBI's Louis Freeh. There's some things in this interview that I would like to bring forth and also kind of connect them to another magazine and other things that have happened recently that I think will make sense at the end of the episode. So stick around. This article was written by Robert Draper. So it starts by talking about Louis and then it gets into where it says, with Freeh at the helm, the FBI has even supplanted the CIA as the nation's dominant intelligence gathering agency, a fact dramatized by the FBI bust of CIA double agent Aldrich Ames in February 1994. Overseas, it has increased offices and manpower, now dwarfing the CIA in Russia. In April, a training facility opened in Hungary to nurture ties with Central and Eastern European police, and this fall, a once inconceivable development will be consummated: the opening of an agency office in Beijing, China. Last year, Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs Richard Holbrooke announced the CIA and Defense Department issues that predominated during the Cold War have receded. We are in a new phase of foreign policy. The FBI is moving to the forefront. The agency finds itself at the center of U.S. diplomacy because crime has increasingly become a borderless phenomenon. According to the FBI, some of the worst criminal hackers spreading computer viruses in cyberspace reside in Romania. A host of Asian gangsters are set to flee Hong Kong before the July 1997 takeover by the People's Republic of China. Most ominous, the fall of the Soviet Empire has enabled the international spread of the Russian mob. As a balancing irony, however, the commander of this new mission is not an iron-fisted red baiter, but instead a man suspicious of power even as he amasses it. Freeh's message, replayed since the day he took office on September 1st, 1993, has been plain: the power belongs to the people. But as Freeh is the first to admit, what keeps us within the law on a day-to-day basis isn't the editorial pages or the oversight committees. It's the people conducting the search, performing the arrest, gathering the evidence. We got to be tough on ourselves. Freeh believes that the FBI, through his leadership, can be tough on itself. But does anyone else? The article goes on to discuss several challenges Louis Freeh experienced and then goes on to say this: the numbing paperwork, the sheer waste of human resources, infighting, racism. 10 months into the assignment, Freeh had seen enough. He turned in his badge and snatched up a plum job in the Southern District of New York as an assistant U.S. attorney. During the next 10 years, Prosecutor Freeh would successfully spearhead two of the most complicated criminal investigations in recent memory. The first, the infamous Pizza Connection case, entailed what at the time was the largest bust of an international heroin trafficking gang, one that moved billions of dollars worth of narcotics through pizza parlor fronts across the United States. The second interrupted his plans to leave the U.S. Attorney's office and enter private practice in May 1990. The article finishes with Freeh's diligent efforts to strengthen the FBI, increasing its number of field agents, expanding its international presence, legislating its preeminence among counterintelligence agencies, reinforcing its wiretapping capabilities may seem like a good idea as long as an honest leader like Freeh is in charge. But the agency has seen few of his stripe and more of the other kind. And when Freeh's tenure expires in 2003, who will command his refurbished empire? Clearly, as the modes of communication change and geographical boundaries disappear, so do the conduits of crime, and Freeh is forced to determine how his agency can best keep up with the times without overstepping the older values of civil liberties. Perhaps Freeh's successor will agree that we've got to be tough on ourselves. That likelihood, however, flies in the face of history, as Freeh knows better than most. Knowing about the billions of dollars of narcotics moved through pizza parlors, and now this well-documented pizza connection, is it that far-fetched to think that perhaps other things might be trafficked through pizza parlors? And speaking of pizza, in the June 1998 issue of George, Monica Lewinski writes a poem. It says, "It gets verse. You may now add poetry to the list of Monica Lewinski's many talents. This month, New York literary magazine Open City is publishing one of her early works entitled I Am a Pizza. Written when she was in grade school, the poem is a rumination on how I can be a delicious lunch, dinner, or breakfast if you're weird. She goes on to describe herself as a round and flat piece of dough with lots of topping, before finally concluding, I am a mouth's best friend. I make you say yum yum. While not exactly a Shakespearean sonnet, the free-form verse is nevertheless charming kiddie poetry," says Open City co-editor Tom Beller. "It's not as if she's trying to ferment a career as a poet, but it's a strong debut, a fine piece of work for a 9-year-old. Since leaving the New George magazine to focus on the George collection and the magazines that JFK Jr. created from the 90s, I've had a lot more time to research. So I've been doing a lot of research on these drug trafficking and other sorts of trafficking in the nation and across the world. And one that I found very interesting that I just learned about is about falcons. I'll be talking more about this in the future, but it's just very interesting how there's all sorts of things that are trafficked, things you wouldn't think of and things that most people don't know about, but maybe will soon. That does it for this episode of the George Collection. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.
George, which is a hoot of a magazine. I thought you were a lawyer.
I was.
What happened?
Well, we decided, actually taking a cue from folks like yourself and you around the 1992 election, that there was an opportunity here to change the definition of a political magazine. Certainly the way Americans were accessing information about politics and politicians was changing. Candidates were appearing on late-night talk shows, on talk radio, on sitcoms, and there was a kind of a leveling process, and while the rest of media clearly had caught up with that, we felt that political magazines per se hadn't.
Your mother was a hell of an editor at Doubleday.
That's what I hear.
Would she have liked George?
I think she would have.